The history of the United States is a captivating journey, filled with remarkable events, influential figures, and groundbreaking innovations. Just like stepping into a new city, exploring the past opens doors to incredible stories and pivotal moments that shape the modern world. From the earliest Native American civilizations to humanity's first steps on the moon, America's history is a tapestry woven with resilience, discovery, and change. This series will take you on a step-by-step adventure through the nation's past, uncovering the people, ideas, and events that defined its identity. Whether it's the vision of the Founding Fathers or the technological advancements that transform society, each chapter will piece together the fascinating story of how the United States became what it is today. So settle in, keep your curiosity alive, and let's embark on this extraordinary journey through time. Chapter 1. Welcome to the journey. In this series, we will explore the incredible history of the United States. Don't worry, we'll keep things simple with clear explanations and easy-to-understand language. Think of history as a giant storybook. It's filled with people, places, and events that shape the world we live in today. By learning about the past, we can better understand how things came to be the way they are now. The United States is a vast country made up of 50 states, home to people from many backgrounds, speaking different languages, and following unique traditions. But how did it all begin? That's the journey we're about to take together. Over the next 20 chapters, we'll explore the first people who lived in America, how the United States became an independent nation, key figures like George Washington and Martin Luther King Jr., major events, including wars, inventions, and even space exploration. By the end of this series, you'll not only understand more about the USA, but you might also improve your English along the way. Key vocabulary: history, the story of the past; country, a large land area with its own government; states, smaller regions that make up a country. The USA has 50 states. Traditions, customs or practices passed down through generations. Events, important moments that shape history. Chapter 2. The first people. Long before there were cars, phones, or big cities, the first people to live in America were the Native Americans. They formed large communities called tribes, and each tribe had its own language, clothing, and traditions. Native Americans lived in harmony with nature. They hunted animals like deer and buffalo, fished in rivers and lakes, and grew important crops such as corn, beans, and squash. These foods were a key part of their daily meals. For shelter, they used materials from their surroundings. Some tribes built teepees, small cone-shaped tents made from wood and animal skins, while others lived in longhouses, larger wooden homes covered with bark. Art, music, and storytelling played a big role in their culture. They created beautiful paintings on rocks, made jewelry from feathers and beads, and shared legends about the stars, animals, and the earth. Their way of life was simple yet meaningful. They deeply respected nature, believing that all living things were connected and that the land should be protected for future generations. Key vocabulary: Native Americans, the first people to live in America. Tribes, large groups of people with shared language and customs. Hunting, catching animals for food. Fishing, catching fish from lakes and rivers. Corn, a yellow crop that was a major food source. Chapter 3. Christopher Columbus. In 1492, a man named Christopher Columbus set sail on a great journey. His goal was to find a faster way to reach Asia, but instead, he stumbled upon something unexpected, the land we now know as America. Columbus crossed the vast ocean with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. After weeks of sailing, his crew finally spotted land. However, Columbus mistakenly believed he had reached Asia. In reality, he had arrived in the Bahamas, a group of islands in the Caribbean. Upon landing, Columbus encountered the Native Americans. Since he thought he was in India, he called them Indians. The Native Americans welcomed Columbus and his crew, offering them food and assistance. Columbus made 4 voyages to this new world, yet he never realized he had discovered an entirely new continent. However, his journeys paved the way for future explorers to travel to America, changing history forever. Key vocabulary: explorer, a person who travels to new places to learn about them. Ocean, a vast body of salt water covering much of the earth. Ships, large boats used for sea travel. Bahamas, a group of islands in the Caribbean Sea. Voyages, long journeys, often by sea. Chapter 4. The First Settlers. In 1620, a group of people called the Pilgrims left England in search of a new home where they could freely practice their religion. They set sail across the ocean on a ship named the Mayflower, hoping to start a new life in an unknown land. After a long and difficult journey, the Pilgrims finally arrived in America. They landed at a place called Plymouth, in present-day Massachusetts. The harsh winter and lack of food made survival difficult, and many of them struggled to stay alive. Fortunately, the Native Americans helped them. They taught the Pilgrims how to plant corn, hunt for food, and fish in the rivers. With their guidance, the Pilgrims managed to survive their first winter. To show their gratitude, the Pilgrims held a large feast in the fall, inviting the Native Americans to join them. This gathering became known as the First Thanksgiving, a time to celebrate friendship, food, and survival. As time passed, the Pilgrims built homes, grew crops, and established a new way of life. More settlers arrived, and soon new towns and villages started forming, laying the foundation for what would become the United States. Key vocabulary: Pilgrims, people who left England to seek religious freedom. Mayflower, the ship that carried the Pilgrims to America. Plymouth, the place where the Pilgrims settled in America. Thanksgiving, a special meal to express gratitude for blessings. Settlers, people who moved to a new land to live. Chapter 5. The American Revolution. In the 1700s, America was not an independent country. It was part of the British Empire, and the people living there were called colonists. They had to obey laws made by the King of England, even though they had no say in those decisions. Many colonists were unhappy because they had to pay high taxes to Britain without having any representatives in the government. They believed this was unfair and began protesting, saying, "No taxation without representation." By 1775, the colonists decided to fight for their freedom. This conflict became known as the American Revolution, a war between America and Britain. The colonists were not alone in their fight. They received help from France and had great leaders like George Washington, who led their army. After years of battles, they finally won in 1783, securing their independence. During the war, In 1776, the colonists wrote a historic document called the Declaration of Independence, which declared that America was now a free country. People celebrated because they were no longer under British rule. The American Revolution was a turning point in history. It proved that people could stand up for their rights, fight for freedom, and shape their own future. Key vocabulary: colonists, people living in America under British rule. Taxes, money paid to the government. Revolution, a major change, often through war. Declaration of Independence, a document stating that America was free. Freedom, the right to make your own choices. Chapter 6, George Washington. After winning the American Revolution, the United States needed a strong leader to guide the new country. That leader was George Washington. Born in 1732 in Virginia, Washington grew up on a farm and later became a skilled soldier. During the American Revolution, he led the colonial army, keeping his soldiers brave and united even in difficult times. His leadership played a big role in America's victory. Once the war was over, the people chose George Washington as the first president of the United States. He served from 1789 to 1797 and helped create important rules for the new government, ensuring that the country stayed strong and united. Washington was known for his honesty and dedication to his people. Because of his great service, he is often called the father of his country. He believed that a leader should always do what is right for the nation. Today, his face appears on the $1 bill, and his image is carved into Mount Rushmore, a famous monument featuring 4 important U.S. presidents. His legacy continues to inspire leaders and citizens alike. Key vocabulary: president, the leader of a country. Army, a group of soldiers who protect a nation. Government, the system that creates and enforces rules for a country. Honest, always telling the truth and doing what is right. Mount Rushmore, a famous mountain with carvings of 4 U.S. presidents. Chapter 7, the 50 States. When the United States first became a country, it was much smaller than it is today. It started with only 13 states, known as the 13 colonies, all located along the East Coast. But as time passed, the country grew and new states were added. In 1787, American leaders wrote an important document called the Constitution. This document set the rules for the country, including how new states could join the United States. Over the years, people moved west, exploring new lands and building towns, farms, and cities. Slowly, more states became part of the country. For example, Alaska joined the U.S. in 1867. It is the largest state in the country. Hawaii became the 50th state in 1959. It is the only state made up of islands. Today, the United States has 50 states, each with its own flag, bird, and flower. Some states, like Texas, are very large, while others, like Rhode Island, are small. Even though each state is unique, they all work together as one country. Americans often say, "United we stand, divided we fall." This means that the nation is stronger when its people stay united. Key vocabulary: states, different regions that make up a country. The U.S. has 50 states. 13 colonies, the first 13 states of America. Constitution, a document that outlines the country's rules. Alaska, the largest state in the U.S. Hawaii, the 50th state, located in the Pacific Ocean. Chapter 8. The Civil War. In the 1800s, the United States was deeply divided. There were serious disagreements between the northern states and the southern states. These conflicts eventually led to a war called the Civil War. One of the biggest issues was slavery. In the South, many people used enslaved workers on their farms and in their homes. However, in the North, many believed slavery was wrong and should be ended. By 1861, the southern states decided to separate from the United States. They formed their own nation called the Confederacy. The northern states, known as the Union, wanted to keep the country together. The Civil War was a long and painful battle. It lasted for 4 years, and many families suffered great losses. Abraham Lincoln, the President of the Union, was determined to end slavery and reunite the country. Finally, in 1865, the Union won the war. As a result, slavery was abolished throughout the United States. This was a major step toward making America a fairer and more equal nation. Key vocabulary: Civil War, a war between people in the same country. Slavery, forcing people to work without pay and treating them as property. Confederacy, the group of southern states that separated from the U.S. Union, the group of northern states that fought to keep the country together. Abraham Lincoln, the president who led the U.S. through the Civil War and helped end slavery. Chapter 9. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 in a small log cabin in Kentucky. His family was poor, but he worked hard, taught himself to read and write, and later became a lawyer. His dedication and honesty helped him enter politics, and in 1860 he was elected as the 16th President of the United States. Lincoln became president during one of the toughest times in American history. The country was deeply divided over slavery, and soon after he took office, the Civil War began. Lincoln's goal was to keep the nation united and end slavery. In 1863, he made a historic decision by signing the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that declared enslaved people in the South free. This was a major step toward ending slavery in the entire country. Lincoln also gave a powerful speech called the Gettysburg Address. In just a few sentences, he spoke about equality, freedom, and unity, inspiring Americans to fight for a better future. Sadly, in 1865, just days after the Civil War ended, Lincoln was assassinated by a man who disagreed with him. His death was a great loss, but his legacy of freedom and unity remains. Today, Lincoln's face appears on the penny and the $5 bill, and his statue stands in the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., reminding everyone of his great contributions. Key vocabulary: Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Slavery, a system where people were forced to work without pay. Emancipation Proclamation, a document that freed enslaved people in the South. Gettysburg Address, a famous speech about freedom and equality. Lincoln Memorial, a monument in Washington, D.C. honoring Lincoln. Chapter 10. The Industrial Revolution. A long time ago, people lived on farms and made everything by hand. But then, something amazing happened: the Industrial Revolution. This was a time when machines started doing work that people used to do. It changed the world in many ways. New inventions. During the Industrial Revolution, many new inventions made life easier. Steam engine helped trains and boats move faster. Cotton gin made it easier to clean cotton. Telegraph allowed people to send messages quickly over long distances. Life in the cities. Before this time, most people lived in the countryside, but now factories were built in big cities. People moved from farms to work in these factories. Cities became crowded and busy. New ways to travel also appeared. Trains and railroads connected cities, so people could travel farther and faster than ever before. Difficulties in factories. Life became easier in some ways, but it was also hard for many people. Factory workers had to work long hours for low pay. Even children had to work in factories. A modern America. Even though life was not perfect, the Industrial Revolution helped America become a strong and modern country. It brought new jobs, new cities, and new inventions that changed the way people live forever. Key vocabulary. Industrial Revolution. A time when machines changed how people worked. Steam engine. A machine that made trains and boats move. Cotton gin. A machine that cleaned cotton quickly. Telegraph. A machine that sent messages over long distances. Factories. Big buildings where things are made using machines.